Hi, and welcome to another one of our searches for the cars that once appeared on Wheeler Dealers. Sometimes fruitful, sometimes disappointing, but hopefully always interesting. This time we are looking for a 1968 Lotus Elan Series 4 and also a 1970 Bomb Bug. So let's see how we get on. So first up we have got the 1968 Lotus Elan Series 4. Now, Mike picked this up from a previous owner who'd owned it for 23 years. And once he got his hands on it, he set to work. He put a stainless steel exhaust system on it and manifold. He repainted the black wheels silver and added some chrome spinners. That made them look a lot nicer. He replaced the donut drive shaft system with some modern CV jointed units. And finally, he did the big job, which was the paintwork. Even though he did the prep, the cost of that was still £2,300. So how did the numbers work out on this one? Well, Mike paid $8,500 for the car. The costs on it were $3,185. Obviously, that paint job hit it quite a lot. They then sold it for £16,700, which left them a profit of $5,015, which I think was one of their biggest profits to date. Now we fast forward to 2024, and that car, according to the Practical Classics magazine valuation guide, should be worth somewhere around about £25,000. So that gives an uplift over what they sold it for of £8,300. So what happened to RBB23F is what you're asking. Well, let's start with my car check, because that gives us the change of various ownerships. And as Mike said, the previous owner had had it 23 years. There's a change of ownership back in 1987, and then the next change of ownership is in June 2010. I think that is actually later than what it was actually happened, because only 2 weeks later is the final change of ownership we've got, which is the beginning of July 2010. I think probably what happened, over 22 years, you could quite easily lose the V5 ownership document. You may have had to get a replacement, etc., etc. So I imagine it was something like that that caused the delay. So we know since July 2010 it's had the same owner, and in the program it had a chap buying it who had a very strong Northern Irish accent. Now, the problem with Northern Ireland, up until recently, it was dealt with separately to the rest of the UK. So England, Scotland and Wales was all dealt with through the offices in Swansea, but Northern Ireland was sort of dealt with independently. Now, the problem that gives us, we lack a bit of continuity, because if we look at my car check again, we can see back in 2005 and 2009 it had MOT passes, but these aren't shown on DVLA. Now, I think the reason for that is, as it got transferred from one to the other, i.e. from mainland UK over to Northern Ireland, it lost that history. So when it arrived in Northern Ireland, it would have had probably normal old school handwritten MOTs, and then in 2017 they introduced the computerized system we have over here on the mainland. And so we can see it had an MOT in 2017, 2018 and in 2020. So that tells us the car is over in Northern Ireland, because it mentions it on the MOT records. And after 2020, the Northern Ireland authorities decided that cars over 40-year-old would be MOT exempt. So I'd imagine that's why it hasn't been MOT'd since then. So all we got there points to it's still owned by the chap that bought it from the program, and it's over there in Northern Ireland. So the second car is a 1970 Bond Bug, and this program first aired on the 19th of October 2010. Mike acquired this car for what I'd consider now a very bargain price for a Bond Bug, which was just £2,500, but it did, as ever, need a bit of work. The biggest challenge was the canopy, which was damaged, and they were difficult to source. Things like the gearbox had a few issues with the bearings and so on, so that had to be replaced. Interestingly, on that, the first gearbox that they bought had a problem, but the supplier did supply them with another good second-hand one. The brake shoes needed replacing, and also the half shaft oil seals needed doing. So few jobs there, not as major as what they sort of often have on these cars. So how do the numbers work out? Well, as I already said, Mike paid £2,500 for it. The costs were just £761, and the selling price was £5,550, and that left them with a profit of £2,289, which on a relatively low value car is a very good markup. So we'll whiz forward to 2024. How does it stack up now? Well, according to the Practical Classics magazine price guide, that car now should be worth something in the range of £10,000. So that's an uplift of £4,450 on what they sold it for in the programme. So what adventures has PTM 110J had since the programme? Well, if we start with our partner My Car Check and have a look at the change of keeper dates, we've got one in January 2010, and that would suit the time that we, the dealers, would have acquired it, because they sort of obviously processed the car and then sold it on later in the year. And then we've got a change of keeper, and the final one we have in August 2010. So that all fits the programme coming out in the October. But where's it been? Well, a little bit of internet digging brings us up this article in the Times and Star newspaper, which is a small regional paper up in the northwest of England. And it features a chap called Roy Biggins, who is pictured here very happy with his car. And this was published the week before the programme went out for the first time in October 2010. And Roy is the same person that we saw at the end of the programme buying the car at the 40th anniversary gathering for Bond Bugs at Woburn Abbey in the UK. If we go over to our friends at Pistonheads, at around the same time found a thread which appears to have been started by Roy as well, sort of pointing that the programme was about to be released. And there's a lot of questions on there, as we always seem to get when there's a thread on a We the Dealer cars about, well, did you really pay what they said, and etc, etc. And Roy points out it was exactly as it says in the programme. He says it was up for sale on an eBay classified ad with best offer. The price, or starting price, was £5,000, and when queried about whether that's what he paid or not, he says, yep, that's exactly what I paid, £5,550, all the fives as he describes it. And we can also see what other adventures this car has been on, because a simple Google search of the number plate brought it up all over the place. The earliest one I found was back on the Bond Bug website in 2011, where Roy himself mentions that he had been invited to put the car on the Reliant Owners Club stand at the large classic car show held at the NEC in Birmingham every year. It then reappears on My Classic website in 2015. A picture of it's been taken there, and that again was for the classic car show at the NEC. And the last time I came across it was on a Reddit spotted post, and that I think was in 2021, and again it's picturing the Bond Bug stand at the NEC show. So it's certainly getting out and about. MOT wise, to get a feel of its activity, it hasn't done an awful lot. It's been MOT every year since the show, right up until 2017, and then from 2018 it would come under the new rules for 40 years old being MOT exempt. It hasn't done an awful lot of miles. Around the time of the show it was about showing 3,500 miles on the clock, and I guess that was probably 103,500 miles on the clock. And it's now showing somewhere around about 5,700 miles at the last MOT. The one interesting thing to note, and I've been caught out with car mileages with this myself, it looks like someone added in an extra digit at one of the MOTs, didn't read it properly, and you see it's caused this spike on My Car Check. So when you get your MOT certificate or check it online, always make sure they've put in the right mileage, because you've got, I think, a couple of weeks to get it corrected. So, two cars there that both seem to be enjoyed by the people that bought them from the show, and still alive and well and on the road. So I think that's great news. 2 out of 2 for a change. How about that? Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please take a look at this video, because I think you're going to enjoy this one as well.